he did a presentation on website development that was geared for other public relations professionals in the Erie region. I'm a past president and I'm a board member of that group. And today's event was the best attended professional development event that I can remember us ever having. And almost all of the credit, I think, goes to Joe. Joe was the attraction, and he did a fantastic job today. As our student board members can attest, because 5 or 6 of them made the trip up to see. But that's what's so special about his visit. He's been so gracious with his time that he's actually doing several different events, but each for specific audiences. Tomorrow, he's going to be the opening keynote speaker at our high school journalism competition, and it's the first time we've ever broadened that to include public relations as well as what you might call pure journalism, and Joe's presence has been a big part in us doing that. So we've kept him so busy that tonight, I think this is what, I think Joe's looking forward to this presentation more than any of the others because he's doing so much for us. I wanted to be more informal than we usually are tonight. We didn't do formal programs. This really is for you students. And Joe, he's a humble, modest guy for everything he's accomplished. He doesn't like to talk a lot about himself, but what I said to him, and I'm delighted to see so many of our majors here. I'm delighted to see so many basketball players here. Joe was a very good basketball player out of Penn Hills High School in Pittsburgh, and I know his coaches would attest that he was also a very good basketball player here at Edinboro University. And I think his perspective as a student athlete brings a lot to the table too. Not to mention that he's the youngest, right? We won't tell his age, because to some of you might think he's starting to get old, but he's the youngest vice president in the 55-year history of Independent Electrical Contractors, the organization for which he works, and that's really a great accomplishment. So I've asked him to just tell a little bit of his story. I want him to talk to you about his experiences here at Edinboro and some of the things that have happened to him in his career path since he left as an undergraduate. I also want you to know he's currently enrolled in our online master's degree program, so technically he's an Edinboro graduate student. Not technically, he is an Edinboro graduate student right now. So this is just for Joe to tell a little bit about his story, to give a little bit of advice, and then I know he's going to turn it over to you to ask questions, and your questions are going to direct where Joe takes his presentation. So I know he's very interested in hearing what you say. So please welcome tonight, back to the Edinboro University campus, Mr. Joseph G. Cephas.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. It's so good to be back in Edinboro. It really is. Not the weather, but everything about Edinboro I do love. My coaches will tell you, my professors will tell you, I bleed plaid. I really do love Edinboro University, and it's so good to be back. As he said, we're going to keep this pretty informal. I want questions to kind of drive the way this conversation is going to go. One of my big things in PR that I always say is I don't tell the people what they want. I give them what they want. So I want you guys to kind of ask me questions, and that will guide the direction that we're going to go. First, I'll just start with a quick story. As Dr. Parinel told you, I'm Vice President of Public Affairs for the Independent Electrical Contractors. When I first came on that organization, I was the communications manager, then the Director of Marketing Communications, and then the Vice President of Public Affairs. While I was the Director of Marketing Communications, I knew I wanted to make that next jump. And I said, how can I become a vice president? I mean, all the other vice presidents, honestly, they have kids my age. But I'm like, how can I get to that next level? And I said, I want to make myself absolutely indispensable to my company. You know, I want to make sure that they'd say, if we lose Joseph, our company's going to burn to the ground. So I started studying up on different aspects I could help out besides communications. One of the things was our IT professional, said that he was going to eventually leave and he was going to start consulting, start his own consulting firm. So I started reading up on different IT, fixing simple problems with computers, fixing simple server problems. So when he left, I actually said I can fill in that role for about 6 months, save us 6 months of salary, and then we can bring on a consulting firm, but I'll still handle that kind of day-to-day interaction. And then I also took over a little bit for our government affairs, and I studied that behind closed doors. At night, I would sit there and read, learn about American history, things I didn't study while I was in school. And I remember our CEO, he said, "Joseph, can you come to my office really quick? I have a simple computer problem. I don't know what's going on." He just had a simple problem where his program had frozen. I just did a simple Control-Alt-Delete and task, and everything was fine. And as I was walking out of his office, he said, "Man, Joseph, it's like you're good at everything." And I had a little smirk on my face because I remembered 7 years earlier, well actually 10 years earlier, I was a freshman here at Edinboro. And I'd started playing basketball, and I had a little funny thing with my shot where I would use a little bit of my left hand, and I'd use a little bit of my thumb like I was shooting a chest pass. And Coach Walkovich stopped me, and he was like, "Shoot that shot again." And I shot it and had this funny spin, but it went in. And he was like, "We're changing that. We're completely changing your jump shot." I'm a freshman. I'm like, I got to Edinboro with this jump shot. You think I'm going to change it now? And he's like, "No, we have to change it." So he was like, "All right, take your left hand, put it on the side of the ball, don't use your thumb, and shoot it." And I shot it. It was about 5 feet short of the rim. I tried it again, another air ball. Tried it again, another air ball. I said, "Coach, this isn't working." He said, "Trust me, continue to work at it, you'll get better." So I'm in the gym with Coach Pat, the assistant coach at the time, who's now the head coach. I'm with him, I'm shooting all the time. I finally start hitting the rim, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm on my way." And then I start making some shots. I keep getting better, and I keep getting better. We're in practice one day, and I pull up from about 3 feet behind the three-point line. I bring out my brand new jump shot, 4 feet short of the rim, air ball. So I think Coach is going to stop practice. I think he's going to yell at me. He lets things keep going. He pulls me to the side after that, and he says, "Joe," actually, my name at the time was Diddy. That's what he called me. So he says, "Diddy, you're not there yet. Don't shoot that shot. You can't do it yet." He says, "Keep working behind closed doors." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Once you're ready, once we get that jump shot where it needs to be, then we'll bring it out." He says, "Never show people what you're not good at, because then they'll think you're good at everything." And he just walks away like Kanye West. I mean, I'm like, I'm just standing there flabbergasted. I'm like, that is the greatest thing I've ever heard anybody say about anything. I mean, it was just life-changing. I'm just standing there like, never show anybody what you're not good at, because then they'll think you're good at everything. And I'm still using that in my career now. I'm working at things behind closed doors. So then when it's my time to bring it out, my CEO says, "Man, it's like you're good at everything." I'm like, "There's a lot of things I'm not good at, a ton, but you're never going to see them. I'm going to continue to work at them behind closed doors." That's why I'm in the master's program right now here at Edinboro, because I'm going to continue to work at the things that I'm not good at. While I'm a decent communicator, good at public relations, my marketing wasn't that great. So taking the integrated marketing communications class here has really changed the way I marketed our meetings. I'm immediately using some of the things that I learned, and I'm applying them to my current position. And that's huge. And so I'm going to continue to work at things behind closed doors, because what Coach said, I mean, this is years ago. This is over 10 years ago. And I'm still using it every day today. And that's kind of goes back to any time that somebody's speaking to you, be present in the moment. I know it's so easy to be on your phone. I'm social media king. I introduced my company to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I have 3 Twitter accounts that I manage. I have my at Joe Cephas, so if you want to follow me and if you want to tweet right now, please go ahead and do it. And then I have at J_Cephas. Don't ever follow that one, because that's my personal one. And then I have my company Twitter page I always manage. But sometimes I just have to put the technology aside and be present in the moment, because you never know when you're going to hear something like what Coach Walkovich said, and you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it while you're looking at your phone. You don't want to miss it. You want to be present in the moment. So that's just a little advice for you, but Now we'll move on to kind of question and answer because I really want to get into what you guys want to hear about my career, and I'll let that kind of drive the conversation. So any questions or anybody want to get this started, kick things off? When I immediately graduated, I did an internship at St. Vincent Hospital, and that kind of opened my eyes to the professional world, but I knew that I wanted to move to a bigger city. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went back home there for a little bit. I had a brother that was in New York City and a brother that was in Washington, D.C., so I knew if I was to move to a new location, I'd kind of have better transition. And honestly, when I started to look at jobs, I looked in the Pittsburgh area, I looked in the Erie area, I looked in the Washington, D.C. area, and the opportunity for entry-level jobs, there was about 20 times more jobs that I could apply to in Washington, D.C. area. And I had the desire to be in that fast-paced political environment. It really drives me, and it continues to drive me today, so that's kind of what took me there. I was lucky enough to find a really good position, because there is, in bigger major cities, there's more opportunity for entry-level positions, because you'll find that a lot of jobs say, you need 2 to 3 years experience, and then you say, wait, how am I going to get that 2 to 3 years experience? But what I was doing was I was still applying to those jobs. I actually got interviews for some of those jobs. So don't let that turn you off, somebody saying that they want somebody with experience, because you never know. A little bit of experience that you may have, maybe if it was an internship or something like that, that could still help you get a job after you leave. You can still be prepared for one of those jobs. I know even when I put jobs out, when I was interviewing for a communications director who was going to be in our department, I put 5 years experience. The person that I actually hired had 3 years experience, but her 3 years experience were quality experience. Because somebody could have 5 years experience, but they're 5 years of terrible experience. That's just a number on a piece of paper. It doesn't define who that person actually is. So to answer your question, it's mainly just because I want to go to a big city. Anybody else? Questions? Yes.
In a lot of our classes, we learn a lot about crisis management. What advice can you give us about dealing with a crisis?
Okay. I'll start with a quick example. It was about 2 years ago. I'm trying, this isn't going to get weird, but I was walking to our restroom in our office, and I bumped into the National Secretary Treasurer for our board of directors. That doesn't sound weird, except his office is based out of Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm like, why are you in our office? Like, what are you doing? Like, I see that you just washed your hands, so I'm going to shake your hand, but what the hell are you doing here? Like, and he comes up to me and he says, oh, we got some business to handle, I'm like, okay. He says, you'll find out tomorrow. I'm like, so then the buzz starts going around the office. Why is the board of directors here? Why is the secretary treasurer here? And the next day, we find out that we have a big meeting around with all staff, all board of directors. Our CEO will no longer be a part of our company. Effective immediately, our senior vice president will be taking over. Everybody's shocked. I mean, this is the man who hired me and made me a director of marketing communications at the age of 25. I mean, I'm like, oh my goodness, what does this mean to us? Are we all losing our jobs? And, everybody's just shocked. And the national president says, any questions? Like, he just says it really quick and then says, any questions? And that immediately took me back to some of the classes. I was like, okay, I need to separate myself from this moment. Okay, I need to take the personal side out and deal with the business. So I collected my thoughts and I raised my hand and I said, who knows about this change? And they said, everybody in this room and about 5 other people. And I said, well, it's going to hit the whole entire membership in the very. So we need to develop an immediate response. We have to have a communication come from the national president immediately to the entire membership so everybody doesn't start freaking out that our CEO just stepped down. And we need to focus not on the fact that the CEO is stepping down, but how qualified our senior vice president is to now take over this job. So my ability to kind of take out the personal side and just focus on what's for the best of our members really show leadership skills to our board of directors. It's really hard to not take things so personally in the workplace, but when you think this is a job and I have a job to do, it really changes your perspective. And I had to ghostwrite our communication from the national president because he's an electrical contractor and he's doesn't know as much about communication. And I honestly struggled for about an hour with 2 words: that necessary change. It's like, now, if we say necessary change, that's admitting that we made a mistake, that we've been at fault for about the past 2 years, that something needed to change, because you don't change things necessarily unless something's going wrong. So I went back and forth with that, and then I'm like, you know what? People aren't happy with what we were doing from the national office. So the fact that we are saying that there's a necessary change is a good thing, and it's going to lead to a new beginnings for IEC. So I kept that in there, and we sent this message out. It was very well received. The members were so excited that they got the news first, and they didn't hear it like from the grapevine, you know, different gossiping and things like that among our 3,000 members. You know, that they heard it firsthand from the national president who sent this letter. As far as crisis management, I think the main thing that you could do is kind of separate yourself from the moment, you know, take your personal feelings out of it and focus on what's best, either for whether you're in a corporation, what's best for your customers, what's best for your members. And once you do that, it can give you that edge, because once you put your personal feelings in there, it completely clouds your judgment. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Yes? There were a lot of the skills that I learned were the classroom skills, you know, just the writing skills, things like that, how to formulate good messages, how to create advertisements, the basics like that. But a lot of things I did learn were being an athlete. I learned the value of time management. You know, it feels like you only have 18 hours in a day instead of 24, you know, because you're spending time over at the gym. So it's valuable time management's all about valuing your time. You know, you're like, if you make every minute count, you know, then you're going to have good time management. That's one of the big things that I learned. Also, by playing sports, I learned accountability. I knew that if I didn't perform at a high level, that would let my teammates down. One of the things that Coach sat me down my junior year, and he kind of told me, it seems like Coach keeps delivering bad news, but what he told me was, you're going to be a defensive stopper. And I'm like, that's not sexy. Like, that doesn't fill up the stat sheet. He's like, no, but we need you to come off the bench and be a defensive stopper. And this means defending the shooting guard to the center. You need to be able to defend all positions. And I was like, Coach, is this what's best for the team? He was like, yes. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take it and I'm going to own it. And that was right before we won back-to-back conference championships. That year, we actually was the first banner that's up there. This is 2005 in Macomb Fieldhouse. Then the next year, we won 2006. But, I mean, you look at I go back now and I look at the statistics. I'm like, I played 20 minutes and I had 1 point. Like, but I know that I contributed to my team's win. And it held me accountable to work on my foot speed, to work on different things. And I do that now, because now, as a department head, I know that I'm accountable not just for myself, but for my entire department. And we all work as a team. And, you know, even though, you know, it might be something in the education department or in the finance department that goes wrong, it's not that department that's going to look bad. It's the entire organization that's going to look bad. So the accountability that I learned then has helped me out considerably now. Then another thing that I just learned, not even just, it sounds like it's something I learned from sports, but it's something I also learned in different classes like group discussion and things like that, is teamwork. Teamwork, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a trade association like I work for, or a big business, no matter what, teamwork is vital. Being able to function in a team, and this doesn't mean that you have to be liked. This just means that you have to be able to work amongst others, and if you get given a task on your own, that you can perform at a high level. One of the things that I actually saw was when in my first job with the Voluntary Protection Programs Participants Association, I was a communications coordinator, and I wanted to be liked by everybody. I just wanted the entire staff to like me. I wanted to be popular. It didn't get my career very far. So when I moved on to the Independent Electrical Contractors, I said, I don't care if people don't like me. I'm going to say what I feel. I'm going to get angry sometimes. I'm going to show my emotion. And it really helped out my career that I didn't have to be liked at all times. So that's a little separate from your question, but I hope I answered your question. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm a college grad over here. First off, host, very insightful. So
Thank you.
I'm interested in your insight on a statement you said in the beginning. You said, I don't tell people what they want, I give them what they want. And a lot of times it's about, presenting that work, but a lot of times what they want and what you give them isn't what they actually thought they were going to get, but it's what they needed. So how do you work with that? Because I know in the position you're in, you have to provide them with good material, but also the goods and not the goods. So how do you work with that?
It's a tough balance to find. Sometimes, you have to find that balance between what people ask for, what they want, and what they need. See, that's the different thing that I say. I give people what they want, but then I also give them what they need. For example, one of the things that our members didn't know what they needed as electrical contractor is they didn't know what they needed to be on social media. They didn't know that they needed a Twitter account. And I'm like, okay, you don't think you need a Twitter account, you don't think you need a Facebook account, Google yourself and see what happens. Google your company. And the first thing that came out was their webpage. Second thing that came up was their Yelp reviews with terrible reviews about their company. And I said, see, you're not controlling your message. Other people are controlling your message for you. And if you're letting that happen, then that's bad. Now, Google Independent Electrical Contractors. First thing that came up was our webpage. Second thing that came up was our Facebook page. Third thing to come up was our YouTube site. Fourth thing to come up was our Twitter page. So I'm like, and all that is controlled by us. I'm like, you might get down to number 10, and there's somebody else that's another message, but we don't care about that. Yeah, and then you get into 11 and 12. Who really goes to the second page of a Google search? Nobody. When you really think about it. So I'm like, we want to control our message on that front page. So that's an example of giving people what they need. And then we send out a lot of surveys. We do a lot of things to get people, their opinion of what they want. But we have to separate that between what they actually need, because there might be something that they need that they don't even know exists. So that's a big separation that you have to make. Anybody else? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Our company represents Merit Shop Electrical Contractors. We provide 4-year apprentice training. We also lobby on their behalf in Capitol Hill and things like that. That's why you see so many trade associations based out of Washington, D.C., so they can lobby congressmen, they can lobby federal agencies. You have that quick access. Like, our office is about 8 miles south of D.C., because that way you get cheaper rent. Because if your office is actually in D.C., it's much more expensive to have an office there. But it's easily accessible. But yeah, we represent Merit Shop Electrical Contractors. We also provide them with a lot of professional development and educational opportunities, because they're electrical contractors and that's their trade, but they're also small business owners. And we need to give them the tools they need to be a successful business owner in addition to being a skilled electrician. So that's what we do. Anybody else? Yes.
How do you plan on teamwork with people that aren't competitive and have that sports background?
One, I always show them what the competition is doing, because you got to have that competitive spirit. And my coaches will attest that my competitive spirit is probably a little too much. I kind of joke with people that aren't familiar with sports, because they'll be like, oh yeah, we want to do a good job, we want to beat our competition. I'm like, no, you want to beat your competition, throw them on the ground, then step on their neck while they're down. They're like, oh, that's a little too intense. Like, bring it back a little bit. We got to stay politically correct. But a lot of that comes with showing them the competition. Like, you might not think that we're in direct competition with other companies, but we are at all times. There's no situation in life where you're just on your own and there's not somebody else competing with you. I can't think of any situation where you're not in some type of competitive aspect. To bring that out of people, first thing I do, especially if it's in my staff, if it's within my staff, you have to be competitive. You have to try to get ahead. I want the people that are in the communications department gunning for my job, not in a conniving way, but in a way they're like, oh, my work is going to be so good that one day I'm going to be a vice president. I want them to do that, because if they're doing better work, it makes me look better because it's coming out of my department, and then it makes the company look better. I want to push that competitive aspect. Then with people that still are pretty laid back and don't want to have that competitive drive, honestly, they don't survive long. I mean, I hate to say it, but it really is the case. Like you might be able to just be in your current position, and if that's fine with you, that's fine. Like if I have somebody on my staff who has been a production manager for the past 13 years, and that's fine. She's happy with that. She's actually 15 years older than me and has a master's degree, and I'm her boss. And she's okay with that. She has no problem with that. And if she's okay with that, that's fine, you know, and she still does great work. But that competitive drive to get ahead, she doesn't have it, and that's okay. That's okay. You still need those people. Any other questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
What advice can you give to us about managing feelings of being overwhelmed or dealing with being overwhelmed?
It kind of depends on what situation you're in. I'll give an example of when I kind of got to my breaking point a little bit, close to it, didn't quite get there. This past September, I was going through website redesign, which is what my other course this morning was on. And involved in that was rewriting every word on our website, which was 1,900 pages of web pages, and I had to completely rewrite that. I was also marketing our convention, so I was working about 80 hours a week for about 2 months, and then I was also in the online master's program. So, I mean, you wouldn't talk about almost hitting your breaking point, but I told myself this is temporary. This is temporary to get where I want to be, to get the company where they need to be. We needed to have that website redesigned. I'm like, hey, once we get it, it's going to be great, you know. And I kept telling myself, it's temporary, it's temporary, it's temporary. And I kept my eye on the goal. That's the main thing. I was like, okay, you know where you want to be. And right now, I mean, I was on the master's program, and I'm sitting there like, okay, in May I graduate. In May I graduate. I kept looking towards that, and I kept my eyes on that. And it makes it easier to post, at 2 in the morning, when you go to post online. It makes it a lot easier to do that when you're like, in May, I'll be done. And I never have to take a course again for the rest of my life, So you can think about that. Like, I mean, I could get my PhD, but I don't want to teach or anything, so I'm going to stop after the master's program. And if you tell yourself it's temporary and you keep your eyes on the end goal and what that end goal will mean to you, it makes things a lot easier, and it takes away that feeling of being overwhelmed, because you're no longer thinking about being overwhelmed and all that's on your plate. You're thinking about what everything on your plate is going to get you and how it's going to get you there. Yes?
Maybe related to that. So you said when you were talking about crisis management, you have to maintain a clear head. How do you maintain a clear head? What are some of the challenges?
Some of the way is that one thing that I do is I focus on the task at hand. I have a work laptop that I use at work and a full computer and everything. But then when I come home and I do my master's program, I close that one, I open up a new laptop because it's like this is a different task, completely different frame of mind, So I focus on the actual goal and what I'm actually working on at that time, and try not to let the other things even come into my head. But in the public relations field, it's not always that easy. There might be, for example, in my position, I'm also editor-in-chief of our magazine. I might be working on our magazine, and I'm like, okay, we have to get this out by the end of the week. And then Congress passes a huge bill that affects our members. I switched my tasks, and I'm like, okay, the magazine has to take a step to the back. It's still there, but I can't think about that right now. I have to focus on this. I have to focus on getting out something to our membership, get them to take action, do a letter writing campaign, things like that. And I think it's focusing on one thing at a time can kind of help you keep that clear mind.
Do you have to keep yourself, like you mentioned, multiple Twitter accounts and other social media and stuff, do you have to keep things kind of compartmentalized, like when I'm going to tweet, when I'm going to do this, when I'm going to check email, in order to not get overwhelmed by it?
I'm not on as much of a set schedule, just because in public relations, I found that actually if I tried to keep myself on a schedule, the amount of work that I got dictated my schedule. So I would actually become more frustrated that I'm unable to follow my schedule. So I kind of keep a looser schedule where I might say, okay, between the hours of 8 and 12, I need to do this, but I won't say at 9, I need to do this. But like multiple Twitter accounts and things like that, I'll tell you what, that comes down to attention to detail, because, I mean, one thing I have to know is what Twitter account I'm on, because that's some mistakes that some people have made in the past. A great example is the American Heart Association. One time the social media expert didn't know that they were on the American Heart Association page, and they said, "We're meeting at Greg's Pub later, pound get slizzard." And he tweeted that out from the American Heart Association Twitter account. And that's just it. I mean, and it was up there for about 3 hours before anybody else knows, because they're the social media manager. Like, who else would notice that? Then the guy who was already at the bar getting pound get slizzard. He finally gets the call, finally gets on his phone, says, you know, you posted the wrong Twitter account. So that comes down to attention to detail, because you always need to know what Twitter account you're on. And the same thing goes to Facebook and things like that. Internally, we actually developed a whole social media policy to kind of avoid that, where we have 2 people that are in charge of the social media. One is the primary, who's our communications director, who's in my department. Then also me as kind of the backup and kind of the approver of things that go out. But that comes down to a little bit of attention to detail. I know that kind of went off the direction of your question, but but I think that was a good example. Anybody else? Yes. Sure. I mean, it's so easy to talk about public relations in a negative standpoint and see it as reactionary, where something happens, then you have to immediately jump in and you have to be kind of the fixer of the problem. But that's not always the case. The way I actually see PR is, I say we're storytellers. I say we're storytellers of a company. They have a story that needs to get out, and we are the ones telling it. I actually take a lot of responsibility, and I take that very seriously. I see it as a big honor that my company trusts me enough to tell the story of our company. So, I mean, that involves getting out a lot of positive things, the things that we're doing on a constant basis, and it's not just waiting for something to go wrong. You have to constantly communicate with, whether it's your customers, whether it's your members, everything that you're working on at the time. I mean, it's just one of the things that we didn't do before I came on board is kind of like building our brand of the Independent Electrical Contractors. And we weren't building our brand because we weren't telling our story. We weren't telling our members what the value of their membership dues was. I mean, the only time that they heard from us is when something went tragically wrong, or whenever there was a bill from Congress that might affect them or things like that. That doesn't mean that their dues are going to something good. So we would start communicating things about, like, anytime that we won an award, that would go out, you know, as a company, or anytime that there were positive bills that affected our company, things like that. We just have to continue to tell our story. And that's how I see, if you take it like with that aspect and you don't just react to everything, I think that's the way that you can get the positive message out there and not just the negative. Any other questions? Yes. It's hard to explain my day-to-day because every day is a little bit different. In the PR field, I will tell you that a lot of times your every day is different. But a lot of what I do is editing, writing, whether it's different messages for just email communication that's going out and things like that. It's editing a lot of work that the other departments are working on to make sure it's consistent with the message of the overall association. A lot of it is communicating out our brand and telling people, telling other departments how to communicate their messages, and making sure that all that stays consistent as well. And then a big part of it is actually that I do with the magazine. It's what I call kind of jigsaw artwork, where you kind of have to lay out a magazine and you have to put pictures in certain places and put articles, lay them out a certain way. So my day-to-day does involve a lot of editing, a lot of writing. lot of website management and things like that. I do travel from time to time, and a lot of that is going to our members. I'm traveling up to Connecticut in about 2 weeks, and I'm giving a message on not just the importance of social media for electrical contractors, but here's how you set up a Facebook account and things like that. I really have to start at the basics with them. It's funny, when I first joined Facebook, it was only open to college kids. You had to have an .edu password. Yeah, I'm very old. And Mark Zuckerberg's face was still in the masthead. Like, I mean, it was a long time ago. I'm dating myself. I need to stop doing that. Okay. But yeah, my day-to-day, it does shift from time to time, you know, but it does involve a lot of writing and a lot of editing. But that's specific to kind of the public affairs side of things. Other questions? Yes. The laying out a magazine wasn't necessarily because I wasn't a journalism major. The writing skills I do, because I do also have a column in the magazine, and the president, don't tell him that I told you this, but the president's message is written by me and just signed by him. That's another thing that's in PR. It's a lot of ghost writing. But I didn't necessarily learn that part here. If I was in the journalism department, I would have. I didn't actually know that I was going to go into like doing magazines and things like that until I was about 24. That's when I kind of found that passion. Found it a little bit during my time at St. Vincent during my internship. But the building of web pages, and it was more like web writing. I did learn a lot of different skills when I was in like college writing skills and stuff, and different styles of writing, because the way that you write for a web page and the way that I write for my article is completely different. One's a lot more succinct. It's a lot more informal. Yeah, I mean, when my article for the magazine is very formal. Don't need to be that formal with the website. And those are little things I picked up here and there, you know, through my various classes, and I just kind of put them all together. You know, that's the thing, is that everything that you're learning here at Edinboro, you're going to use every aspect, but it may not just be like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to use organizational communications right here. You're going to take little aspects from organizational communications. You're going to take a little things from, one of the things I'm taking now is communication ethics. You know, you're going to take little things from various courses, you're going to put them all together, and that's how you're going to, you know, function as a job. And, you know, that's the thing, that right now, while you're learning, you have to think that every little thing that I learn is going to be a part of who I am as a professional. When I first came to Edinboro, I was a business administration major, didn't like that, stopped that. Was an elementary education major, didn't like that, stopped that. Communications major, I found my passion. It's what I wanted to do. So I hung on to every word that they were saying. I mean, I really did. Once you find your passion, it's not as much as I'm learning so I could get a degree. It's I'm learning so I can be a professional and be a better person and make some money. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I just know as a county, you can switch up, you know, take journalism classes and communication classes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Specific classes that you took wherever you use that later in your profession.
Yeah, I could have. I could have if I knew that journalism, that the magazine side of things is something that I would have really went into. But I mean, the PR side of things, there's so many things I learned there. And there's things I'm learning right now in the MAX program that's pushing me, that's making me be a better professional all the time. Other questions? Anybody else? Yes.
Obviously, I've had a little more time to spend with you. We've had some one-on-one conversations about your career interests and your future. And I just happen to think this, listening to you and what makes the more proud. And you know, one of the things public relations management challenge to become a leader is not just to have the skills, the great communication skills are essential, but to be a leader or a manager in whatever area you specialize, you need to understand those issues. I know this morning you talked a little bit at that presentation about, you know, what did you know going in about being an electrical contractor or construction in general. But to be effective, you had to quickly make yourself an expert and understand terms and what was important to electrical contractors, what was important in construction in general. I mean, I think back a couple years, we had a conference here, and our keynote speaker was the Director of Community Relations for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
She promoted the NBA Cares her job to promote what NBA players were doing, in their cities across the country and service around the world. I'm just trying to picture you. I think you'd be scarier than Dennis Rodman if you had a PR position in a basketball capacity. If the Chicago Bulls called you, or Edinboro alum Jack Swope at the Orlando Magic and said, "We hear good things about you, Joe. How'd you like to be vice president for communications for an NBA franchise or for the league?" I just wonder, with the passion you have for basketball and the passion you have for public relations, would that be a dream job for you, or not so much? And if so, how would you approach that?
I don't see that really as my dream job. My dream job would be communications director at the White House. That would actually be my dream job. I'm in the right city. But I mean, I actually think that would be too easy. While I do think it would come natural, I actually enjoy something that I learned while I was at St. Vincent, that I learned actually about myself, is that the first article that I wrote was on the X-stop back surgery. I had no idea what this was. And then I interviewed a doctor who only confused me more. I mean, he was telling about all this technical jargon, and I'm like, I don't understand what he's saying. So I recorded it, and I went up and looked up everything that he had said. And then I formulated my article by researching. And I loved that. And I think if I was in a franchise for the NBA, it's kind of like, yeah, it is everything. I think it would get a little boring, actually, for me, because I wouldn't have to do that as much. I already know the rules of the game. I already know how to promote kind of the basketball side of things for playing it so much. And I kind of know what drives players and things like that. I don't think I would enjoy that as much. But if you do know somebody in the NBA office, you can shoot them my business card. I mean, I would have no problem with that at all. But no, I really did enjoy researching. And the company I was with before I was with Independent Electrical Contractors, dealt with workplace safety and worked with OSHA a lot. That's another aspect I really didn't know much about. So I had to study up on that. And I had to do that on my own time. And I think that's kind of what built my work ethic a little bit, was doing that extra studying to completely understand. Because in any company, if you're a PR professional, you need to know more about that company than anybody else, because you're the one communicating the message, and you don't want to put out wrong information. So it does take a lot of studying behind closed doors, and that's the part that I enjoy. Any other questions? All right, well, just to give a little more background about myself, when I graduated and when I finished my internship at St. Vincent, I had about 6 months where I was looking for a job. I had moved back to Pittsburgh, where I'm originally from, living in my parents' house. I thought that I was feeling myself a little bit. I was like, hey, I just did an internship at St. Vincent. I knocked it out the park. I'm just going to walk into a place, and they're just going to give me a job. Didn't work out that way. So I was living at home a little bit, and it was even harder looking for a job in a city that I did not live in. So anytime I had an interview, I had to hop on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and head down to Washington, D.C., and it was a little difficult. And the thing is, about 5 months in, I was offered a sales position. And I think I could have done well, but it's not what I wanted to do. It wasn't my passion. So I actually ended up turning it down. So, I mean, if anybody in here's getting ready to graduate, I'll say be patient and wait for the aspect that you're really passionate about, because that's how my career grew. If I would have went down the sales path, I might still be at that same job doing the same thing. But since I picked something that I truly love, it really helped build my career, because I do love the communication. I do love public relations, and that's kind of helped me to be a vice president when I was 27 and now 29. I am saying my age now. I'm about to be 30 in a couple months. I don't know what I'm going to do. I actually have a couple gray hairs when I grow out my beard, so I had to shave that off immediately because I feel like I'm getting a little too old. But I will say, just be patient. That job will come. If you continue to work hard, one of the things that I did was I swallowed my pride a little bit, and I went back, and during the summers, during my when I played basketball and things like that, when I go back home, I'd work at Champs Footwear, and I would sell shoes. And that was just something to kind of pass the time, and it's a nice summer job. Went back, and I started taking hours just because I got tired of sitting on the couch, and I needed a reason to put on pants and go outside and be a functioning member of society. So I took some more hours doing that, and I just remained patient. And it really paid off. It really did. If you're in the position to do that, I know sometimes there's different positions where you kind of need that money, and that's kind of what I was fortunate to have my parents that I could go back and live with them. And working at Champs, it did provide me with a little bit of money to at least go to the bar and do something, with my life. All right, any questions? Okay. All right, well, I'll just talk a little bit more about my career when I was at IEC. And when I came on as communication manager, one of the things that happened was that the person that was above me, she actually was about 6 months pregnant. So I knew she was going to go on maternity leave in the very near future. And that was an opportunity that was kind of presented to me. And I was like, okay, when she's out, I mean, I'm not like this conniving, but I was like, I'm going to show that I can lead this department while she's gone. It actually worked out that after her maternity leave, she worked for about 2 months, and then she said, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm gone. I'm bye. And she just quit, like, on the spot. And so our CEO was like, oh, no, now we got to go through the search process and everything. And I said, no, you got the person that was running the department for the past 2 months right here. And he's like, oh, yeah, let's make you the director of marketing communications. It was actually kind of that easy. I kind of fell into the right situation. But I had positioned myself like that for the past 2 months, and I demonstrated that, hey, I can do this. That came from taking advantage of an opportunity that was presented to me. I mean, you never know. Coach was actually just talking to me just a second ago, and he said some people see situations as obstacles and other people see them as opportunities. So I knew that was going to be harder work to be the director of marketing communications at the age of 25. I knew I was going to have to demand the respect from people that were twice my age and 2.5 times my age, really. I knew that I had to demand respect from them, and a lot of things I did was, using my expertise and using a lot of useful information such as statistics to prove my points, because I always say numbers never lie. I was using statistics to say, hey, we need to do things this way, and this is why. So people couldn't question my judgment because I proved it with fact. And, that kind of made people respect me. And a lot of that, then I also got into what I spoke about before with the using your emotions and things like that. There's nothing wrong within the workplace getting angry. I do say that. I mean, every once in a while I do get angry. And back when I used to want people to like me, I would keep that inside. But how do people really know how you feel? Or you might end up doing something that's wrong for the company just because you don't want to show that anger. You want to be productive anger. You don't want to just yell and throw a chair. But you do want to make sure that you're heard. And if you're worried about being liked, and you're worried about making friends, then it's going to be tough in the business world. Any other questions? Yes? My favorite part of my job, besides being in charge? My favorite part of my job is the writing. I really do love to write, and it's the versatility of my writing. It's not. I don't think I would like to write a book just because I'd be writing one style runway. It's kind of writing for a magazine, then writing for a website, then trying to condense a full, the full meeting that we just had into 140 characters. It's writing for Facebook. I mean, that's an actual skill, being able to properly communicate messages through social media, that is a skill. And I really enjoy that side of things. Yes.
Joe, I too think there's a place for passion and anger in the workplace, but I'm going to ask, the people who know me laugh when I say that, but they agree. But the question I have, a pragmatic nuts and bolts, since our audience is so student-oriented, and at IEC you are in a position, where you hire staff. I guess hypothetically, let's say you have an entry-level communication position at IEC. So please make this multi-part. Just general advice. These are all people who, they came to this institution primarily because they want to be able to earn a good living doing type of job they enjoy. What advice could you give them? What things would you look for in your position in terms of things they should or should not have on a traditional resume? Things they should or should not promote on their social media accounts? Things they perhaps should or should not say in an interview with you? Is it just I think it would be helpful to them across the board, you know, the traditional, the social media, even down to the personal interview. Just, if it's you hiring, what's going to give them an advantage?
Well, first part is that you have to exude, you just have to have professionalism just out of your pores. Like, you have to be professional in every sense of the word. And that comes from dress, that comes from the way you speak, and that comes from your work ethic. And I at my job, I kind of, and especially with my department, I do preach work-life balance. I do think, you know, there's going to be times where things get really busy, especially in the PR field, you know, and you're going to have to work until 8 o'clock. But then, hey, if we're done at 3 o'clock, good, leave. You know, like if your work's done, I have no problem with that. I do preach work-life. But you have to be professional in the time that you're there. Some things that I look for just in basic resume is, one, everything to be spelled correctly. I mean, and that's not just, I mean, I know you have spell check, but spell check doesn't catch if you miss like the in between a sentence or something like that. So that will immediately just get you thrown out of a pile, because you have to think, you have to wow somebody on that resume. If I have 100 resumes on my desk, you have to wow somebody within about 5 seconds to catch their attention. One thing that I do want is that it's not as much for a resume, but I mean for entry level, but I want everything that's on your resume to be relevant to your position. And that just doesn't mean, you know, that you say, oh, I did PR for this company. But, you know, let's just say somebody was in the Boy Scouts. That does teach responsibility and things like that. That does go towards your position. But if you tell me that you're a juggler, I don't care. That has nothing to do with PR. You know, little things like that. You do want so that takes changing your resume for each job that you kind of enter into to make sure that's built in the way that for the job that you're trying to interview for. Then once you get into the interview process, I do, especially in public relations, you know, I want people to be able to speak and articulate and communicate their thoughts. I don't want people to be too egotistical, but do have the confidence to tell what you've done and your accomplishments. You know, there's a fine line between being cocky and being confident. And there's nothing wrong with being confident. In an interview, you are speaking about yourself. You're the one applying for the position. You're the one trying to get the job. So you have to speak about yourself. But you don't want to just say, hey, I'm the greatest and you should hire me. You know, there is a little balance that you have to play there. And then, I mean, with a resume, the other thing that I look for now is I do look for social media to be on it. I mean, one of the things I look for is I'm like, do you have your LinkedIn page on your resume? You know, because that shows that you have skills in social media. I'm not necessarily going to Facebook stalk people. I'm telling you, on Facebook, on Twitter, the best thing is privacy settings. That's your best friend. You know, there's nothing wrong. If I go to somebody's page and it says private, that's okay, you know. But if I go to your page and it's not private and I see some crazy pictures, that's another story. You know, so privacy settings, there's nothing wrong with having a private page or having certain albums that are private. Some employers can really get around that because they'll friend your friends and then they'll have pictures that your friend that you're tagged in or something like that. But if they're going that much, I honestly say that you probably don't want to work for that company, because I know that there are some examples of companies that do that. But when you have your Facebook pages and things like that, especially in public relations, you want to make sure that you at least have a presence on the major social media accounts. And I'm mainly leaning towards LinkedIn. You want to make sure all your information there is up to date. And then you have a Twitter account, you have a Facebook account, because that shows that you can manage those pages and you know how to operate in that forum. Any other questions? Yes.
I think that when like an employer would look up Facebook, that they might get disappointed if everything's private. Like they went there to try to figure out who you were and see a little bit of your personality, and they don't get anything.
In some cases, they may be a little bit disappointed. I don't think it's going to be strong enough that you would not get the job or that you would not bring into an interview if you everything on your resume. They will get your personality in the interview. Because I could put out information about me on Facebook that has nothing to do with who I am. I could say that I'm, Joe Cephas, but I could put out that I played soccer, not basketball. How do they know that that's not true? If they're willing to then Google me and see what I did in university, who's really going to take that much time out? That means that they have way too much time on their hands, and no companies are really going to do that. I don't think they're going to be too disappointed because your personality comes out in your interview, and that's when you really get to see who the person is and if they're the right fit for the company. Any other questions? Yes.
What do you think of the difference between your traditional professional resume and some of these really creative ones that, especially for the communications departments, are coming up with?
Me personally, I don't like the creative ones, but that's just me. I know there are people that do like them, but me, I think it's a little loud. I mean, there are different ways. Your accomplishments should speak for themselves. So, I mean, you could spend 4 days working on your resume to get it nice and pretty, but what if we only have 3 hours to do a project, So that's kind of the way I see it. It's just like that doesn't really tell me as much about your professionalism. Or you could have had your cousin work on it, who's a graphic designer, but you actually don't have the skills to make your resume look that way. So I don't like it, but I do know that there are companies that do. There's companies that say, hey, this stands out. My advice would be to shy away from it, but that's just me personally. There are some companies that will like it, and it depends on what you're applying to, too. I mean, in the PR field, I don't think as much you need that. But if you're going more into the graphic side of things, or some of the magazines and some of the journalism, that might be a little bit better, but me personally, I don't like it. Any other questions? All right, well, it's been an hour, and I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm going to stick around for a little while. If you have any one-on-one questions that you want to ask me, feel free to come up. If you have something that you didn't want to raise your hand or anything, if you want to ask me questions just personally or anything, just feel free to come up to me. I'll be here for a while. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It's been great.